Cam, we're back. We have been planning this kickoff to football season, but really it's like now a Q1 football season recap.
Yeah,
And we were recording this Friday after Thursday Night Football. I'm so mad. I don't remember ever
man.
being so angry about a Bucks game. I feel pain in my body. But anyway,
Yeah.
we have a lot to recap. I'm so happy we're back. This episode is long overdue. We have lots to talk about. How have you been?
All is well. All is well. Doing our best to stay dry out here. I mean, Whitney, anytime it rains in Tampa, it's a little PTSD from Hurricane Helene, but all is it's a little bit better. You know what I mean? A little bit better on this end. And then going back to what you said, the Bucks game, I watched it and I saw them go into overtime, and I'm like, okay, if they go into overtime, Kirk Cousins deserves to at least get a dub at some point because he's been in so many close games. Hats off to Kirk Cousins. Even though I'm a Buccaneers guy, Whitney, we're both Buccaneers folks. You got to tip your head off to someone who has been in the league for a good amount of years, right? He's like a grandpa at this point, and he's finding ways to win. And so it's pretty inspiring, I would say, even though it's against our Buccaneers, who I think we're going to be fine. But it was a good game, and feel a little pain, but also some joy that the Falcons can finally get their shit together.
I mean, two things can be true at once, and you're a better person than I that are happy for the Falcons. I mean, here's the thing. You can't hate Kirk Cousins. Like, you want to
Yeah,
find a reason to hate him and you can't. Like, you're happy for the good guy. Like, it was the
yeah.
perfect example of like the good guy finally coming out on top. And I don't know, he like
And
moved to
Raheem
Atlanta.
Morris,
Yeah, he
the
moved
head
to
coach.
Atlanta and woke up as Tom Brady. Did you have Raheem as a coach at all?
No, I didn't have Raheem as a
You didn't have-
coach.
Okay.
But he was at the Buccaneers. He was at the Buccaneers for a while too, Raheem Morris. So it's just
He
like I
went
said,
Bucks,
sometimes.
Rams. I feel like he's just trying to like follow in your footsteps.
Yeah,
He's now in
yeah,
Atlanta, where you're from. I mean, this is like we should really ask him like what's going on here of why he's following you
right.
across the country. But I like Kirk. I watched like the quarterback show on Netflix last year. He's such a good person and he's so
Yeah,
likable and he always does the right thing. Like that is the type of person we all want to win. I just
yeah.
didn't want him to win against my team. Like, and I think what was so frustrating is if like Captain Kirk goes out there and he's got his outfit from Kohl's and he's like, does he drops his kids off in the carpool line and he's,
Yeah,
full super dad Kirk mode where he turns into Superman on the football field. He drops his kids off in his plaid and then he turns into Tom Brady. I can't explain it, but he's
yeah,
got the special sauce. Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but so again, if he had blown out the Bucks, I would be okay with that. Like I would accept it and like good for him. I'm happy to get the W. But I felt like the Bucks lost that game. And we've had a few like close games like that where you're like, oh, we just need one first down or the defense to close it out, and we do it. And I think what was
Yeah.
also heartbreaking for me was, I know like your guy Levante had that it was his first interception
Interception.
since 2020 and like you can't enjoy it when you have a heartbreaking loss. Like I wanted him to have his moment. Mike Evans had two touchdowns. Logan Hall had he had two sacks and Vita
Mhm.
Vea had the big sack. I mean, there were so many big moments that
Mike
we
Evans' 100th career catch as well.
yes, we blocked
Yeah,
a kick.
touchdown.
When have we ever blocked a kick? And none of that gets talked about because we played 59 minutes of complete, really good football. Yes, we gave up a lot of yards, but all those things I just mentioned on defense were such bright spots. And it was like a
Yeah,
highlight reel. And it reminded me of like our Super Bowl run, actually the first one, like when Brad Johnson was our quarterback. And then we blew it. Like, what? Okay, from a football perspective, because, you know, obviously there was the fumble. We couldn't get a first down. I did not like the play calling on that last drive. We were being too cutesy and conservative. Okay, let's run a yard, blah, 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 3rd and 25. And then we
yeah.
punted into the end zone and freaking Tom Brady / Kirk Cousins came back. So from a football perspective, how did the Falcons win that game? Did the Bucks lose? And how? How did either team?
Yeah. So one thing I will say, it kind of goes back to the fourth quarter moments of Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, when it comes to the fourth quarter, lost against the Chiefs, I believe, and then lost like two other games in the fourth quarter. And I think that they've been tested, right? I think Raheem Morris was like, look, guys, like when we get in these close games, we got to figure out how to win. And they focused on it. So that's one, just fourth quarter dominance. I think Kirk Cousins figured that out. Second to that was turnover. The turnovers, at the end of the day, like you talked about, Levante had a great turnover, but then we also fumbled the ball following that turnover. And so it's tough to win in those situations. So that's number two. And then number three, I think I also go to, like, they call it football gods or whatever it is. But when it comes to the referees and some of the calls that they make, I know we had a face mask that we didn't get called. And also, you go back to the Chiefs game, the Falcons, they didn't get a pass interference in the end zone to possibly win the football game. And so I think at some points, when it comes to the referees, they go your way or they don't go your way. And I think that was another factor as well. There's just some calls that didn't go our way. And yeah, it was just unfortunate Kirk Cousins came out on top. But, at the end of the day, those turnovers were costly, and we took the L. So, just got to chalk it up, and we'll have to see them again later on in the season.
Right. And I completely agree with everyone saying the face mask should have been called at the end. There is no doubt about that. But I also think that good teams find a way to win. I mean, the Falcons missed a field goal twice.
Yeah.
The whistle blew, they had to move back, missed it both times. And then on top of that, they had a kick blocked. So really, they should have had 6 extra points. Well, because they won, it's different. They're celebrating, and especially the style in which they won. But they're not saying, oh, we should have had 6 extra points. Like, again, both teams had things that didn't fall their way or mistakes they wish they could do over or calls that were whatever you want to call it. But the Falcons overcame the barriers that were in their way.
Yeah, and like you said too, right? Like at the end of the day, the Falcons have been on the other side of this situation a couple of times, and so they just learned from it and they prevailed. So kudos to them. But the Buccaneers, they're looking good. Baker Mayfield, I don't know if you saw recently, he went undercover. I forget what his undercover.
Hilarious, the minions.
Yeah, yeah, the minions. And then I'm talking about his beard, like his beard and the makeup.
He was Gus, and he just kept ask. Someone was like, "What do they play on the big screens?" He was like, "Do they ever show the Minions?" Or like every time someone talked about a TV, he was like, "They should just put the Minions up there." Yeah, he was Gus Swayze, right? Wasn't that his
Gus
name?
Swayze. Yeah, I thought that was pretty creative. I thought it was, and then Amazon Prime covered it, which was cool. So it sounds like there's gonna be more Gus Swayze or some other undercover guys when it comes to the football season.
He had me howling. Like I
Yeah.
was so funny when he was like, "I got in trouble for throwing a note in my own locker," and I just loved at the end when he started like throwing the ball like 75 yards, and even like the receivers were like, "Damn, he just like threw the ball at me, he chucked it at me," and like him going around and just he was like, "How much weight is in this room?" Like, and he was like, "I didn't think they'd walk around all day doing the Tampa Bay chant." Like, I mean, just like his sense of humor is so on point. I was howling watching it. And so I
What
thought this was like going to be our night. I thought it was like the night for Baker because it was just the perfect start.
What did you think about his comment about Tom Brady? Tom Brady being serious when he was in the locker room, and Baker kind of having that comic relief a little bit. And yeah, what did you think about that? So Tom Brady snapped back at him. What were your thoughts on that?
I think that both are true, right? I think
Yeah.
that that's why Fox pays Tom a lot of money to say things like that and have a perspective that no one else would have had. That is why he gets paid the big bucks because he can say, "I was in the locker room of this team
Mm.
just a few months ago, and this is what I noticed." Like it's just unmatched perspective, and I think that Tom Brady is a serious goal focused. He's very very much focused on the result. Like some people are stop and smell the roses. I'm not that way. So like it's like the journey is based on however whatever the result is. If the result isn't good, I'm not like, well, that was an amazing journey, but we failed. He's goal oriented. So am I. We want results. We are there to generate
Yeah.
results, and that is our metric. And I think
Mm.
well, and also Tom came from winning a lot of Super Bowls in 6 Super Bowls in New England. Like his background is winning and winning Super
Yeah.
Bowls. He has a lot to uphold and he knows how to get it done. Baker feels grateful to have found a home. He was a journeyman, didn't really have, so he's like, whoa, I get to stay here. And I think, he doesn't have the same trophy case as Tom Brady. And
Yeah.
I think he is probably in a lot of ways just more relatable. Like they both bring positive aspects to the locker room. It's just totally different styles. So I think they were probably both right. They needed some, a kick and focus on the results and let's grind it out. And they probably also needed some humor. Like I think everyone in the locker room could benefit from learning from both of them and from having their styles. Like there's not one type of leadership style that works. I think both have helped the team succeed and were probably what we needed at the right time. Like a lot of the veterans were there during the Brady era and they can take his leadership style
Seriousness.
into the
Yeah.
era and then, on top of that, so they can kind of be the disciple of Brady and help the guys be serious and focused. Whereas you do need a little fun and laughter and to relax and all those things. And Baker can bring that for the new guys.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they made Bucks made the playoffs last year, with Baker, so that he got a big contract, and so that does make sense. It helps with camaraderie. One thing I will say though, too, I know the Buccaneers that Falcons game, they were up, like at halftime, they were up by a lot of points, and I think Baker was trying to catch an interception on the sideline and back in his Gus mode, and I do believe that. I'm sure Tom was like, "Look, see, I told you, right?" Because if you were to stay focused and locked in on the game, then maybe the outcome would have been different. So to each his own, right? But I love how you said some of the other players that played with Tom can carry over some of that serious championship mentality. And also, I would say Baker hasn't had the same journey as Tom has had, right? And hasn't really learned from the same coaches and the same type of regime that Tom has going under Bill Belichick, who never smiled during a press conference. You know what I mean? So their upbringings have been different in the game of football. But at the end of the day, Baker's doing a hell of a job. Baker's doing a hell of a job. So good job, Bake, kind of carrying the torch.
He can scramble and make things happen. And despite the loss, I thought the Bucks played really well in all facets of the game. I was impressed with special teams. Even though they gave up a lot of yardage, there were some really electric defensive plays. We have a running game. It would be a whole different conversation if we had just won. And it's a division opponent. Now the Falcons have the edge and we have the same record. It was just, and I'm curious your opinion. Is it good or bad that the Bucks have the mini bye and they don't play again until Monday Night Football? Like they kind of have this little break. Is that a good thing or a bad thing coming off this loss?
Yeah, so I think it's a good thing, especially this part of the season. I mean, I know it's only going to week 5 or whatever that is, but a lot of times playing back to back, right? You have a game on Sunday and you got to get ready. You got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then really you're playing on Thursday. So you really only got one day to fully recover. And a lot of times what they say, when you work out, it takes on that second day, that's when the lactic acid buildup hits, right? Your muscles are sore. And so that's Tuesday for them. So really they have Wednesday to really feel somewhat good. And then next thing you know, they're playing again. So it is good to recover, to get back whole and figure out how to win in the fourth quarter, right? Is the Falcons situation happened, but can't let it happen again, right? We're supposed to put teams away like that and kind of move forward. But one thing I'll go back and say about Baker, he's really conscious, right? He's conscious of what's going on. He's conscious of his personality, how it affects his teammates. And I saw he donated $100,000 to the Tampa Bay community for Hurricane Helene. So I thought that was really cool too. Like, I don't know if I've seen Tom kind of come out, on camera like, yo, I want to donate. I want to do this or that. So it's always been football. So
That we had some natural disaster when Tom was here. I don't know if it was the pandemic or there was another hurricane, but a lot of money to feeding Tampa Bay meals.
okay, good. Okay.
He did do a lot for the community, so I want to give him his flowers there. One thing I want to say is like if you look at Bill Belichick and Andy Reid, they are polar opposites in terms of personality. Both have won Super Bowls. Again, different leadership styles can be successful. It's just about being the right coach for your team and in the right situations. And I also feel like we just need to normalize like being honest and giving your perspective without it meaning it's tearing down someone else or hurting their personality or hurting, their feelings and negating who they are. Like what Tom said was true, what Baker said, like, can't we just have a civil conversation with different people's opinions without having it to mean this person is bullying this other person? Like, I think you can tell people's intent, right? And I don't think Tom was malicious. I think he was giving his perspective. He's right. That's what he needed at the time. Like, how can he had a better view than any of us will ever have. And I think when it comes to Baker, he's speaking from the here and now. And I think, again, both are correct. You can need different things for different people at different times, but I just don't know why we have to make it like pit them against each other. It's
Mhm.
just it's two different people. Like I think we should celebrate that we hear difference of opinions, and we want to encourage people to be honest. That's how we find out what's going on. And the more we make a thing out of it, the less people are going to want to speak up. I mean, there was a game, I don't know if you remember, the Chiefs. I think it was like a few weeks ago, and a guy talked about his, he found out he was playing on Friday and it wasn't reported, and he was so distraught that he broke the news to, and he was like, this is why I don't want to talk. Like, I think we just need to have a little leeway to allow people to be human beings and to not just jump on the clickbait, but to actually like share, to take what they're saying and kind of use the message as a learning tool. And I was
Jordan
also,
Mason is Jordan Mason. I think it was Jordan Mason, the running back for the 49ers. Yeah.
you're right.
Yep.
That's exactly right. I don't know why I said Chiefs. Sorry. 49ers, you're exactly right. And he was talking about the injury, and he had his big moment. It was his big night, and then he was so crushed, and he was just speaking from the heart, and we want more of that. And I think we just so quickly jump on people that it's like they don't want to say anything because they don't want to get it wrong. The other thing I'll say about, you mentioned this, but the Baker donating to hurricane relief, and I felt like my parents have lived in their house for 38 years. I'm 37, so they've had that house a year longer than I've even been alive. They have never had flooding in the house. This storm, Helene is a big jerk. That woman
Yeah.
came in, and with the storm surge, they had 4 feet of water. We got back from my brother's wedding. They had lost their house and everything in it, every
I'm sorry
photo,
to hear that.
memory. Luckily, they have some friends to stay with. We're working on a more permanent solution, but I just felt like the Bucks were playing. I mean, Georgia got hit too, don't get me wrong, but because of the coast here, a lot of people in Tampa have no house. They don't know where to go. And again, it's worse in other places, and we're lucky to have our lives. I don't want to put it out of perspective because we are grateful for that, but the fans here really needed that win yesterday for their souls, for healing. And it just, people have already had so much heartbreak that it was just another stab in the chest that people really didn't need.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was it's tough, and I'm sorry to hear about your parents. I know we were talking about this offline before the show today, so I'm praying that that things will turn out in the best for them. I know you talked about like family photos and all that. I know like family dinners, and I've done some family dinners with you in your house too. So I'm just praying that that they come up on the positive side of this. One thing I will say is I'm glad that they weren't actually in the home, right? Because one thing I will say is for myself, when I during the storm, the Air Force Base they evacuated, and that's right down the street from my house, and they were like, "Hey guys, we're evacuated. You probably should do the same thing." And so for me, Floridians now we're like, "Oh, hurricane, another tropical storm." Well, little do you know, around like 11 o'clock that night, or shoot, around 12 o'clock that night, I listen outside and there's some kids like screaming like, "Oh, our street's flooded, our street's flooded." So I kind of get up and I look across the street, and like there's this house that's on fire. And I think like a car caught on fire in the
Oh my
house. And in Whitney, and I can like feel the heat kind of hitting the window panes. I'm like, wait, hold on, what's going on? So I go out, you see some embers flying over. It was total chaos. And at one point I was like, I told my wife, I'm like, "Hey, we should probably pack a backpack and get ready to get on foot and move if this house burns down." So one thing I will say is I'm glad that your parents weren't in there when things were going down, because it was going down when we were in the house. And so it was not a good feeling at all. Thankfully, you all were celebrating, your brother, the wedding. So it was more positive things going on that week for you all. Unfortunately, when you guys got back, of course, it wasn't the news that you wanted to hear. So like I said, I'm praying for you all, and I'm hoping that the parents, find a great next location that they can call home.
Thank you. And I mean, I appreciate that very much. I think you never, like, we left the house and it was in perfect condition, and you never think, oh, I'm never going to go into my childhood house again. Or my parents, they thought that was going to be their forever house. And all of a sudden, you get back, and in one knee-jerk moment, it's all gone. And apparently our neighbor across the street, like she stayed and the flooding was so bad she had to climb out her window to escape. So
Whoa.
when they were, my parents are in evacuation zone A, which is the closest to the water. When they tell you to evacuate, there is a reason. Like, get out. Your life is not replaceable. And I
Right.
think people in Florida pretty much, yes, we're kind of immune to it, but when they say evacuate, people leave. Like, I think in a lot of places people get so tied to their property that they're like, oh, I built this over the years. Like, no, like you cannot risk your own safety and well-being.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to the house is going to happen. You deal with it after, which is the process that we're in. But I think I've been really surprised that there hasn't really been help. Like, luckily, again, they have friends that are currently housing them. We're working on a more long-term solution. And then either they're going to have to sell the house for the land or the dirt, or they'll have to fix it up and sell it. But there's no ability to, like, they don't want to rebuild, they don't want to start over. So if you don't want to do that, there's no like good renovation option that's going to make sure this doesn't happen in the future. And there's been like no aid. Like, they filed with FEMA came yesterday, and the woman was like, yeah, we don't deal with like housing or temporary housing or permanent housing. Like, basically, well, I'll look at your belongings and verify like what you said on the application is true, and maybe they'll get a little bit of money for that, and insurance will come in, and in a few months you'll get a big check. But what are people supposed to do right now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is the unfortunate part, right? Like, what are the resources? What does that look like? Like you talk about for the Buccaneers, they donated $1 million, but what about like, hey, we have some housing opportunities for people have been displaced, hotels, that are in the city, what does that usually look like? So, that may be a question to talk about with the city. When he's like,
Oh
hey,
yeah,
y'all
I
should
mean,
probably.
we should ask because, or I think, okay, there's a few things. Tampa General Hospital uses this thing called an aqua fence. It's this big fence they built because they're right on the water, and they didn't have any flooding because of this fence. And it's very expensive, but I think the city should pay for people to either have one or pay for people to build their houses up to code. You can't leave people high and dry and just like,
Hmm.
ironically, you're not high and dry, but very wet
That's
and
not funny.
wet.
Yeah.
You can't leave people stranded with no like, that's what a city is for. That's why we pay taxes. Like, help people succeed, protect them, put them in a place where this isn't going to happen again, because
Yeah.
otherwise the climate is getting warmer, we're going to have more of these storms. So if we don't put like more precautions in place, the same thing is going to happen. So I feel like the city needs to provide resources to people to put them in a position where they're going to be better off in the future. So
Absolutely.
that's the first thing. And second thing, we've had, and it's been wonderful, so many people have called, what can we do to help? Can we bring food, clothes? My parents have been able to come to my apartment and shower, and they have Wi-Fi and air conditioning here, and they have a place to go and recoup, and they have friends' houses for that. But jokingly, every time people have called, they're like, what do you need? I'm like, a house for them. Like,
Yeah.
their house, I mean, the sewage, the water, it's everything is shot. The air conditioning, pool pump, electricity, everything is gone. They're gonna have to tear out the walls. Where are they supposed to live while that's going on? Like, what they need more than anything is a house to live in until
Yeah.
their other house they can renovate or sell, or what, until they get back on their feet. Like, we need a lot of, I heard something, 20,000 people, like 20,000 households were destroyed by the storm just in this area. Where are those people staying? Like, that is
Yeah.
a component I feel like people are just not talking about and not really assisting with. Like, all these like supply stations with food and clothes, people do need those. People do need supplies. I'm not saying they aren't helpful, but like, the most important thing is a furnished house.
As a roof. Yeah.
Yeah, for people to go to where they could like make it their home until they can figure out what to do. Like, where is that?
Yeah, yeah. Even some of these corporate, these corporate housing that goes down here in Tampa, right? Like, change some of these corporate housing into homes, for people who are affected by the flood. Like, there has to be some type of switch. And, Whitney, within the next couple of months, I know we're getting into like, the October, November, the fall time here. But what I will say is, like, I would imagine before the end of this year, that there's some type of, system in place where it's like, hey, if this another hurricane comes to Tampa, like we have this set up for people who get displaced or whatever that looks like. But there should be some type of, hey, Mayor Cancer, come through with something so we can feel more confident, Whitney. Because I mean, when I drive here in Tampa, it's almost a little PTSD. Like, hey, is it going to flood again? What does that look like? So I'm looking forward to seeing what the city does in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I feel like I'm prepared to be a consultant at this point. Like, if they would like to hire me to give my POV on what needs to be done, I think the thing that people don't realize, maybe outside of Tampa, is we're at sea level. So when we flood, there's nowhere for the water to go. That's part of the problem. So eventually, we're going to need better flood infrastructure. But until that happens, we need to protect our houses. And it's weird. It's like half the city is moving on and life is fine because they weren't affected, and then some people just their entire lives are in their front yard. It's very apocalyptic looking.
Yeah.
And what was crazy about this whole situation is the storm surge came in with high tide, and so it was like a tidal wave that overtook this area like Thursday night, and it receded pretty quickly within like a half hour, but all the damage had been done. And so people are in positions they've never been in before. My parents are older. It's not easy to clean out a house and then have nowhere to go, and it puts some stress on you. And so I'm just hopeful that, like you said, Mayor Castor, and moving forward, that we have better protocols in place. Like I said, call me. I'm an expert at this point. I can tell you exactly what we need. But I think that Bucks game yesterday, if it were a win, would have really made people feel a lot better. I'm curious, as people that had to evacuate, and just anytime like we go on a trip at all, we're so tired. Like, I feel like it's not really discussed, especially on a short week, the impact that traveling has, because we're like, okay, this team's playing this team and they magically appear in that city and we expect them to be as if they slept in their own beds. Like, what is the actual personal impact, or like how does it feel when you have to travel to away games? And even like Denver stayed on the East Coast, but they played the Bucks and then the Jets. That's two East Coast teams in a row. What if they had to go back and forth?
Yeah, it is tough, especially when there's altitude changes. You know what I mean? Like I know we talked about, so there's a big old plane drive flying over just now. Yeah, hopefully they're trying to figure out some stuff for this hurricane and help people out
Right.
with those airplanes.
Flies. I hope they're bringing you a house.
Yeah, right. Something. But yeah, whenever we're traveling, it's tough, especially when you're going to places like Denver, the altitude change. I know there's games in Mexico City, right? And there's high altitude there too. So those are the really tough games when the conditions aren't favorable, or even coming to Tampa, playing the Buccaneers in this heat, or Miami. So the time change is tough, but it's more so like the conditions out in the environment. But what I will say though is a lot of times when you're traveling as a professional athlete, like I won't say there really is no excuse, but like they pay us a lot of money to go out there and ball out. So it's important for us to understand our bodies, how we're feeling and how to adjust that. If I'm feeling a little bit sleepy or I'm feeling a little bit groggy, well, let me get some more water, get some more fruit, let me get some stretching going on and figure out how to get my body and my mind to go perform. So unfortunately, we can't use that as an excuse, but it is tough. I'd imagine the Packers and the Eagles game when they played in Sao Paulo, Brazil, right? Like that's a long flight. That's almost 10 plus hours. So that is tough, but it's also when you on the team to figure out scheduling, right? And like when it comes to flying overseas, hey, do we have to get out there a week early so we can get adjusted to the time zone so we can figure this out? And so that's why like the player operations, some of those people in the front office, their job is really important to make sure that the team is traveling at certain times that you can maximize your playing potential. So it's tough, but unfortunately there's no excuse.
Right. It's a sports science really, to figure out the rhythm and where you're going and hydration and all those things. I mean, I did think about, not only did the Bucks have a short week and they had to travel, but they played in the heat last week. Like the Falcons play in a dome, that has to have some impact on you because again, ran out of gas at the end of the game. Like who's to say that isn't, because of the fact.
And we have the shades now on the sideline. We never had those shades on the sideline, but now that the shades up there. So yeah, it's a lot that goes into it. Hydration, and also too, when you like people think, oh, a team is good because they have a great coach and a great, quarterback and they're doing this and that. it's a full team sport. It's the people in the front office, it's the athletic trainers, it's the weight coaches, it's everyone, right? Are you getting the proper nutrients? Are the people that are fueling you educating you, and are you understanding what you have to do? Like, for example, they used to tell us for every hour that you fly on a plane, like that's how many water bottles you need, right? And so there's just different sciences to how to figure it out. The Rams did a great job of educating us on our nutrition, right? They had like kombucha shots, they had different things that'll help you, ginger shots, and they had different things that would help you kind of navigate the game and kind of what came with it. So, it's like the LA diet, avocado toast and shit, stuff like that.
I was gonna say I bet like the Rams are doing things very differently than like what they're serving. It's like
Absolutely.
let's have some steak and potatoes, and LA is probably like, all right, what can we get at Air One that
Yeah.
in this smoothie? How can we
Alkaline water.
oxygen? Yeah, I don't know, like yeah, right. Oxygen, like what are we doing here?
Yeah.
But it's probably based on where the team is placed and what trends or what's hip out there. But it would be really interesting to hear kind of best practices from the different teams and maybe put it all together and have one kind of league wide, hey, these
Yeah.
are recommendations. Speaking of the Rams, I have good news.
All right. Lay it on us.
Okay, so cut to like 2 weeks ago,
Mhm.
and this was like the beginning of like a crises a day happening, which we can go into in other episodes. But a
Yeah.
dog that I was babysitting, I had to rush the emergency vet, and it was 16. And long story short, the dog did have to be put down, but
Oh
we
no.
got it to the vet and were able to um, like get him on some medicine so that he was well enough, at least for his mom to come back from her trip.
Oh,
And she got to
nice.
her vet, and then she put him down kind of in her own time. We kind of kept him on life support. So that was happening. My boyfriend Chad's mom and sister were staying here because their house was being tented. So I was cooking dinner for everyone. The smoke alarm went off, which I promise is not an indication of my cooking. Just every time the oven opens, what happens? And all of
Yeah.
a sudden, I see the Rams are calling. I literally thought they were butt dialing me. Like I was like, oh, just like he must have, because I'm in a lot of people's phones. I'm like at the end because of W. So I'm like, he must be, but because I'm used to only seeing them call like really during the draft.
Mm.
So I obviously co-represent Dylan, who we've talked about, Dylan McMahon, who was drafted by the Eagles. But the agent I work with is very high powered. He's very well connected. He's the guru in the industry. So I just assume if there's anything with any of our guys, they'd be calling him. The Rams called me like all these years throughout the draft process. I had built a relationship with this one scout, and we would talk back and forth. How's your dad? He's getting married. I came up with hashtags for his wedding. I mean, just little things catching up.
Yeah.
And we talked about the guys I had in the draft and potentially the Rams taking them, and none of it came to fruition. But it's just such a good example of you don't know when a relationship is going to come around to benefit you or to come through for you. Of like, and it was a genuine relationship. I didn't expect anything in return, but those years of just getting to know each other paid off. And he called and said, "Hey, we want to sign Dylan to the active roster," because Dylan was on the Eagles practice squad. So I called
Oh
the other.
wow.
Yep. And, long story short, the next day Dylan was on a plane and is now on the Rams active roster. And I gave Dylan my 2 cents of why I thought this was a good move. And, we went about things the right way and had conversations with the Eagles and made sure Dylan felt good about it. And the Rams were so nice. They were like, look, some people, even on the practice squad, are happy where they are. We don't want to we don't want to uproot him if he doesn't feel like he wants to move cities, because it's logistics and housing and rents. There's all the stuff that goes on behind
Yeah.
the scenes.
Taxes. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And ultimately, you never know if another opportunity is coming in the NFL, so you have to grab it. And so he is now on,
Congrats.
which you make like 4 times as much, in a year and a week as you're making on the practice squad. But I couldn't believe, like, the agent I work for represents Jason Kelsey, who is bigger in football right now, and the Rams are calling me. I literally thought it was a butt dial, and they're probably like, what is going on? Like the smoke alarm. Like,
Yeah. You're saving dogs. Yeah.
how many agents are cooking dinner and saving dogs? Like, there are times I'm reminded, I'm like, oh yeah, like I am a female agent, like have different
Mm.
responsibilities. And I'm like, I just wonder if any other agent has ever been in this
Yeah.
exact.
Well, one thing I will say, I think you mentioned that you said you helped him come up with hashtags for his dad's wedding or his wedding, and I think that whose wedding was that? Was it his or his dad?
His wedding.
Oh, his wedding. Okay, so I think someone told me this, right? They were at a recruiting fair, at a college recruiting fair at Syracuse. Actually, they had a whole bunch of applicants. They didn't remember who was who, but they remember the people that actually helped them out, right? They wanted to exchange information through LinkedIn. I know now through the iPhones you can tap the iPhones and you can exchange info. Well, one of the students actually taught one of my buddies how to operate, the LinkedIn and get connected quicker. And he remembered her because she supported him in that moment, not the resume. He's like, I didn't even look at the resumes. It was because she helped me out. She brought me value. So I think the real takeaway of that, Whitney, is, and that's why working with women is really important. Is you all are thinking about the holistic picture, not necessarily what I can get or what I can give, but it's just like, hey, how can I support you as a human? What does that look like? And so those hashtags and what you've done for his wedding, I'm sure he remembered that. He was like, yo, as soon as I get a chance, let me call Whitney. So don't overlook that, being of service. I think that's really important.
It's a really good point because I kind of just was like, okay, I've got this one guy. I'm much lower on the totem pole, and I work with someone who's the top of the top and the most well known. And like, why they'd call me over? I didn't think there could be any reason, but I think you're right that relatability, relationships, and I mean, I guess shout out that he had a last name that made for some really great hashtags, and I was able to come up with, a slew of ideas for him. So I guess some things just fall into place and are meant to be. But that was a really cool moment for me. And I felt like I really got to guide this particular player on why I thought it was a good move for him and give him my insight. And that kind of feels like my why, or my, why I want to get into this industry and to really help guide these young men on a lot of the big decisions they have to make. And he's been so happy with the move, and so I felt so good that it was the right counsel and
Yes.
advice. And I there are a variety of reasons why, and we could go into that in another episode. But one thing that I want to bring up, I think the last episode we talked about the Super Bowl, and there was one moment I didn't get a chance to bring up that really warmed my heart. And as we were in Vegas going around Radio Row, no surprise knowing you, we somehow ended up on the Fox broadcast booth. Um,
Yeah. With
you
Kevin
never
Beecham.
never know what's about to happen when we're with Cam, but chances are he's gonna somehow end up in the spotlight on TV, like in places I never expected that are amazing. Like you just put your seatbelt on and say, like, I'm for the ride and I can't wait to see where it takes me. So we're walking around Radio Row, and you knew a player, I think, who was in the booth, someone
Yeah,
who
Kevin
played.
Beecham, the Cardinals. Yeah, for Big Brother, Big Sister, I think it was.
Right. And we had they're headquartered in Tampa. So you saw Kelvin, you went up, talked to him, and he was with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and he was mentoring a young man who, was getting experience as a broadcaster for Fox, kind of a kid correspondent.
Yeah.
And down with him and gave him awesome advice and talked to him and made him feel so comfortable. And it was just like, you're the guru, and this kid didn't even realize how lucky he was getting to hear this advice from you. But one thing you told him, which just made me want to cry, is to work with women. And I think I wasn't expecting to hear you say that or feel so strongly or give that advice to a child. So like, I'm so curious, like, why you think that's so important and what prompted you to like give that as like a top piece of advice.
Well, I think so much what I said earlier, right? It's like the holistic picture. I think, for an example, for right now, I'm working at Visa, and my my team leader, she's a lady, and actually my VP is a lady as well. And I realize a lot of stuff gets done. A lot of stuff gets done on our team. Her name is Jen, and she's great. You know her from working at VaynerMedia, and just working with women, I think it's a good compliment because there's diversity in thought. Number one, there's more thought, right? I think there's a saying like there's like women have like 3x amount of thoughts per day that men do. So that's why women need more sleep than men do, right? And so I see it with my wife as well. Like working with her, she has 2 businesses, and her brain is constantly going. And I'm the one that's like, hey, you need to take a breath and like really think through this stuff. She's like, no, I got to do this, and this. And so I think that partnering with women is great. Number one, because Women run the world. Number two, women work hard, and the Olympics are a perfect example of it, right? I think the women who won medals, I think, could have been like the third country in the ranking system for medals won. So it's just the power of women. And then I think the last part for me is at the end of the day when you don't know what's going to come next. I think working with women is great because women think about the full picture. That goes back to my number one. It's just the full picture. Guys are, and someone mentioned this, like the way guys think is kind of like a waffle. It's like everything's spaced out, in different spaces. You kind of do one thing, you set a boundary, do the next thing, and women's minds are like, spaghetti, where it's like, hey, I'm thinking about all things at once. And so it's a better compliment. And just for me personally, I work better with women. Guys too, but most of my life I've been competing against guys, in football. So I just find it better to work with women.
I once heard that a woman's brain is like if you had a bunch of tabs open on a browser all at once.
Yeah.
So like, it's just like there's the multitasking and
Yeah.
like and obviously I'm so grateful for and there's so many. I don't want to tear down men while building up women, but I there are moments where I'm like I think men just like stopped evolving. Like I think they just like stopped, like they ran out of gas and women just kept going because like they just think through things so much more and like can see the future picture where I feel like a lot of times men are like what's right in front of me.
Yeah, yeah. I pray that God, me and my wife, we have a daughter first, because I would want my daughter to lead my son. And I think that's just the best route, because like you said, is sometimes guys just call it a day. We're one tab or two tabs on our browser. Other than that, we're good. Women, that you have more tabs open. But I just think, yeah, women are powerful, and I think we have to have more men to uplift and push that forward. And that's always been part of my MO. But I'm starting to realizing it. The older I get, is just the more I lean on the women in my life to help make things happen.
Well, it's mutual. Thank you for supporting us and believing and giving us a platform and opportunities we wouldn't have had otherwise, because you do need the majority to make things happen for the minority. And it's interesting you mentioned that point about a daughter, because at my brother's wedding this past weekend, one of the things my mom was saying to his fiance's family was that I kind of helped pick out or guide every step he was going to take when I was 4 or 5 years old. I was arguing with my mom that he was too close to the pool. And then I found a high school I thought would be a better fit for him. And then
Mm.
when I went to UF, I helped pick out his fraternity because I knew it would be, and all these things ended up being the best things for him. But I was able to kind of give recommendations, and he's very smart. He went to Harvard Law, but like when it came to those emotional support or what would be a holistic fit, I was like
Yeah.
very much on the lookout for his well-being, which I think is something women factor into all types of conversations. And I do think like when it comes to the agent world, it's why we need more women, because it's not just contracts and doing a transaction. This is your life. These are decisions. And this actually brings me into the last thing I wanted to bring up. And I know it's been a few weeks, but when the Tua concussion situation
Oh
happened,
yeah.
I felt like that it was, again, we divide, right? Like it's this whole debate. Should he retire and should he not? And it's so black and white. And I kind of sat back and, obviously the situation unfolding and him getting it's always painful and you just want what's best for him. But I said, why can't there be a third option where instead of does it have to be this or does it have to be that? Can't we say this is why it's really important that he builds his brand and his life off the field and someone's looking out for him as a whole person and his future while he's playing? Because at the end of the day, if you are taking that route where you're creating opportunities and you're maximizing his marketing experience, and while he has this time off, what can he be doing while still healing, but that's helping him overall so that he has the choice of when he can walk away instead of like it's black and white right now.
Yeah, one of the other, yeah, and I think about you mentioned, I think about Christian McCaffrey as well, because like he has like tendonitis in both of his Achilles, and these are guys that are at the top of their game as of last year, right? Tua was leading the league in passing yards and touchdowns, and Christian McCaffrey's on the Madden cover, Offensive Player of the Year, and Tua was a possible candidate for Offensive Player of the Year too, and so like you said, it sometimes is really black and white. And I do love that option of building things outside, right? What does your foundation look like? And I'm a retired athlete and I'm hearing guys talk about, their identity, what that looks like, them waking up each day, what they want to pour into. And I think now is a perfect time for someone to support Tua and say, hey, like, you realize this may not be, the end all be all. So you have to start working on that transition, what that looks like. So I think what you mentioned, not necessarily retiring, not necessarily playing, but that third option of working on the transition. What does that look like? What are you passionate about outside of football? Because, I think as Matthew Stafford's wife, she has her own podcast, and she talks about Matthew Stafford and one of his spinal issues that he had. Was it a year ago or 2 years ago? And like, he has kids, and at the end of the day, it's the woman that gets affected. So, we talk about Tua, talk about Loa, his partner, what is his wife saying? I'm curious about what her perspective is, and she knows what's best for him, right? And I'm sure at some points throughout the day, if he's forgetting things or doing things that aren't really conducive to his life and his health, if he goes back there on the football field, he can't go to his coach and be like, "Hey, coach." She can, but she can't be like, "Hey, Tua's doing this and that at home, so I don't think he should play anymore." And Tua is thinking some other things. So, at the end of the day, working on transition is really important. And I'm hopeful that Tua has a plan together. I'm hopeful that he has someone in his corner, hopefully a powerful lady that's looking out for him, because I mean, a lot of guys get on these microphones like, "Yep, he should retire, or he should play," and that may not be the absolute answer.
I heard one guy on the radio here in Tampa. Obviously, we have a big military community with McDill here, and he was saying that he got a bunch of concussions in the military, and now if there's turbulence on an airplane, like, that can trigger a concussion because they're exponential. Like, the more you have, the easier they are to get, the worse the damage is, all those things. And so I just feel like as he continues to add to his concussion total, and it's gonna, his life is evolving, the key is not necessarily black or white, but empowering yourself so it's your choice. I think what people don't want, especially professional athletes, is for the decision to be made for them. And I think if he feels like there are other aspects of his life, and maybe he finds something he's way more passionate about than football, who knows? But at least all his eggs aren't in one basket, and he's giving himself choices and a gateway to figure out what's best for his future. But it's not that it's all or nothing. And so, yeah, Tua, if you need marketing help, call us. We got you.
Yeah, right. No, yeah, social victories. Whitney's got you covered. Yeah, and I'm grateful for you as well, because when it comes to broadcasting or even being in marketing, right? Like, you were able to help spark that interest in the space, and that's what I'm doing now. I'm doing content strategy at Visa, right? And a lot of that's because of the content that we created while I was playing, even now. So, at the end of the day, have strong women in your corner, and you're going to be just fine. That's the takeaway for today.
Give us a forecast. What do we have to look forward to for Q2 in the NFL for 2024?
Yeah, 2024 Q2 in the NFL. Hopefully the Buccaneers get some more W's. That's number one. Two, are the Chiefs going undefeated? What does that look like? I know they're 4-0 right now, so do they continue, to be undefeated? And I think three, either I want to say the Jaguars or the Browns. Like, can they turn the season around? It's looking ugly over there. It's tough to see, right? Two former Clemson quarterbacks, unfortunately, can't find a rhythm. And I do think that the system that you're in is really important, right? I think that, like, how Justin Fields went to the Steelers and had found a great system. Baker Mayfield came to the Bucs and found a great system. So I just do hope that these teams that aren't doing well, or Bryce Young for the Panthers, the teams that aren't doing well with young quarterbacks, hopefully they can change teams and find that new spark. Because it's unfortunate to see some of these number one picks kind of go down the drain.
And I have, my own thoughts on Bryce Young. I mean, I think it was clear CJ Stroud was the better pick. I was surprised Bryce went first, and whatever happened, I'll never know. But the behind the scenes, that's just like on draft night, it was so clear to me. I've had a few like moments where my jaw hits the floor and I have that feeling of knowing, and that was one of them. But what is going on in Jacksonville? Because Doug Peterson, very well respected coach who has a lot of successes under his belt. Trevor Lawrence is obviously a talented quarterback. He's not a fraud. So what is going wrong there?
Yeah, I mean, I saw Doug Peterson. He was, I think it was a presser, and he was like pointing fingers. He was like, yeah, the coach is coaching the players. They got to make plays out there. And I think when you get to that point, like, shit has hit the fan, right? Like, that's like the Mayday button. I don't know how to fix this. And so a lot of times it has to do with support. What does his support look like? Does he have enough women on his staff, right, to help him navigate his career? You know, I mean, like at the end of the day, it's diversity in thought, right? Like, how diverse is your council? What does that look like? Are you able to the next presser say, hey, I know last time I said the guys have to make plays, but I actually, talked to some of my consultants that are women, and they were like, hey, you probably shouldn't do that. You probably should think about attacking it this way or that way. And so I think there's some more support needed on that team. And the Jaguars would be the Jaguars, to be honest, Whitney. I know they made the playoffs a couple of years ago, but the Jaguars would be the Jaguars at the end of the day. So to each his own. But I do think Trevor, he might have to get into a better system. I know offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators change often, but it just has to be the right system for him because I know he can win. He's been winning since high school. Had a perfect record from high school to college. So,
well, he's making up for that now. Welcome to
yeah.
this is balance. Welcome to balance. I will say one high note that I wanted to celebrate from Q1 was that Chrissy Coleman and Sandra Douglas Morgan, Panthers and
Raiders, yeah.
Up between NFL teams with two female president. They each have a female president. It's the first time two women president teams have faced each other.
That was cool.
I mean, it was a big deal when Amy Trask was president of the Raiders. Back in the day, she was the first. But to have two women, that was a moment where I felt like I'm sad we're still celebrating such small steps, but it is progress. And yeah. I didn't want to let this episode go without celebrating that moment. So you go, ladies, you're an inspiration. If you see her, you can be her. And it's just more moments like this will beget further moments. And hopefully if we just keep shouting from the rooftops that, having balance and equity and women in the room is beneficial, that more teams will do it. And if only the Jaguars had a female coach, who knows where we
yeah.
We'll never know. Well, I look forward to Q2 and then we will do a wrap up. And we appreciate everyone tuning in and listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and we can't wait to talk to you soon.
Peace.